Welcome, everybody, out to Geek News Reviews and Opinions for Saturday night, July 16th, 2016. And just as a really quick plug, it just so happens that literally 5 minutes ago, or 5 to 10 minutes ago, we were on another random hangout with Anime Atlas. So you guys can check that out as well, and I recommend you guys check out his channel. He is awesome. And who knows, he might actually make it onto the podcast at some point for a guest spot. But you guys are here for some geek news, reviews, and opinions, and man, have we got some this week. In fact, you might actually say that at least two of us have bullseyes on our foreheads right now for a recent review. So, of course, I'm your host, Adam Mickelson. I hope everybody's had a wonderful week. Mine has been very, very busy. Like, it's funny because tomorrow is going to be like my only day off, and then I'm right back into a recording agenda. So I'm happy that at least tomorrow I can kick back, relax, maybe spend some time with my daughter, and have some fun that way. And of course, I'm being joined by my fellow geeks, my fellow YouTubers, my fellow critics, my fellow opinionated peoples. First of all, we have Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost, Utah. And when I said that we had bullseyes posted on in between our foreheads, you and me are pretty much the ones that did it. And there's no way to get rid of it. How are you doing tonight, Romney?
I'm doing all right. So far, I haven't received any death threats yet, but that just might be because I'm so below the radar. But yeah, so far it's been a pretty good week. Been a pretty decent day, at least. I mean, yeah, I had to work. Managed to hunt down some rare DVDs. Well, not so much rare. Hunted down a copy of the original Ghostbusters 1 and 2 at a used DVD store, alongside classics like The Phantom Toll Booth and Season 1 of Red vs. Blue. And yeah, it's just been kind of a relaxing day, or at least trying to, although I will say this, some of the choices for the Xbox One are kind of stupid. Because my brother recently got one, I've been trying to play it a little bit, but you have to wait for so long to install, and especially when one of the Buttles games is Rare Replay, and it's like, oh, we've got to install these 6 games!
He has an original one, doesn't he? The first one that came out.
I don't know which one. It was literally my older brother was taking advantage of the deal where you buy a Surface Pro, you get the Xbox One for free, and Xbox Ones.
That's a base model, because like I have the Elite version, which comes with the solid state drive in it, and so I don't have those issues. But I've heard that the base Xbox One has that issue. Same thing with base PS4. Like my PS4 takes forever to get downloaded content on there.
Yeah, it gets kind of annoying, and because the first game I tried playing was Rare Replay, trying some of the Rare games. The NES ones don't translate very well onto Xbox, to say the least. And sadly, some of the games, they were a lot better in my head and in my childhood memory than when I actually tried playing them again, like Jet Force Gemini.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the problem here, is that the games are so old. I didn't even know if they would translate very well into Xbox One.
Well, I mean, the Jet Force Gemini, they at least actually give you the option between classic and revamped controls that actually work with the system. But just the design in general hasn't aged particularly well.
Yeah. And of course, we're also being joined by the Shadow Blazer. How are we doing tonight, Alex?
Doing pretty well. As I mentioned, Adam and I both got to join in Anime Atlas's casual live hangouts chat on the air. That was pretty fun. It's always great to hook up with some of the fellow anime communities. And, well, just for the hell of it, I went ahead and I started up on yet another run of Long Live the Queen. That went up to my secondary channel because it's over 20 minutes, so I have to put that for there now. But check that out, everybody.
Yes, I only feel bad for Anime Atlas because basically he let on a known misogynist at least one known misogynist onto his random hangout. I'm sorry, man, but you know, I appreciate it being there. So don't take that the wrong way. I'm a known misogynist because I have an opinion. So with that, we have some opinions. So we have some news, reviews, and opinions to get into. This is actually another one of those lighter weeks, but we actually have quite a bit to take on. And I hate to tell you guys, none of it is going to be about Pokemon Go, okay? All of the stories, I can't even begin to say how many listener suggestions I got on dumb Pokemon Go stories that were basically like, examples of human stupidity, okay? I mean, I've already had this stuff happen with my family. I'm not going to name... Like, people want me to name names. I'm not naming names, but I have heard of people walking into steel posts, into old wood telephone lines, or getting lost in campus. And also, we had our fellow panelist, Aldo, report on apparently a guy who instantly braked and hit the curb just to get out of the car to catch a Pokemon.
At least he pulled over.
Or the other one that people wanted to bring to my attention. Again, I love it that I'm getting wrestling stories, and I'm not a hardcore wrestling fan. But apparently, WWE wrestler Tyler Breeze came out into his match, and usually, I guess, it's his shtick to come out and do selfies. He has one of those long selfie sticks, and instead of having it on the camera feature, it was on Pokemon Go. And I guess he went out to the ring and was able to actually catch a Pokemon in the ring. This is the most that I'm actually going to be able to talk about it, because and apparently he lost the match, but it's okay. It was a victory. He caught a Pokemon. So I can't really talk too much about that. If you guys want to go into the details, I think it's over on Xavier Woods' channel, Up, Up, Down, Down, so you guys can check that out there. So unfortunately, we're not going to get into Pokemon Go, because Pokemon Go is kind of a controversial subject right now, because people are kind of being idiots, and some are silly, and some of them are just like, crap.
Yeah, people, you're abusing our propensity for Nintendo talk here.
And the other thing too, so I appreciate that. Actually, another nice perk is actually we do have a live chat tonight. So people can give us their opinions live, and we can actually talk to you. Oh my gosh! It's almost like progress is moving ever forward. And it actually just got brought up by TG5455 that Pokemon Go and Ghostbusters are the two top stories right now. For people who are hoping that we're going to get into an in-depth concept of Ghostbusters, we're not. Because really, me and Romney said everything we needed to say in the two videos that are on his channel right now.
Yeah, if you want an in-depth discussion, we already made one. It's on my channel. And if you don't care, it's an hour long. I didn't edit it. We literally just recorded for an hour, talking into specifics. It was a bit rambly, but if you want us to go in depth, that's where you go.
Alex, so we have a spoiler-free review of Ghostbusters, and then we also have a discussion which is very spoiler heavy. So if you don't want to be spoiled, check that out, or check out the spoiler-free review, see what we thought, and then also if you don't care, check out our discussion, because we did bring up some good concepts, and ones that I've actually been seeing repeated from the major outlets as well. So I'm not saying that we're completely going to be talking about Ghostbusters. There is a related story, but there you go. Let's go ahead and get into the first story tonight, which is something that doesn't surprise me in the least. So people might remember a game that came out, I don't know, a while ago called Lord of the Rings: Shadows of Mordor. And there was quite a bit of controversy around it, because people like, I know Angry Joe is at least one of them, where in order for them to be able to get a, quote, review copy, they basically had to sign about 6 pages worth of paperwork, a bunch of it saying basically you can't speak negatively about Shadows of Mordor. You can only speak positively about it. And if you do speak negatively, well, you have to send us the video anyway so that we can chop it up and take all of your negative commentary out. I'm summing things up, but that's pretty much what they were saying they were going to do. And it actually created controversy with a bunch of reviewers actually saying, we're not going to get a review copy of Shadows of Mordor. Which is sad, because they liked the game. They just didn't like the hoops that Warner Brothers was making them go through to get that. And now it turns out that the opposite happened as well. We had people who were getting paid to do good reviews of Shadows of Mordor. Funniest thing about that. Alex linked this. I think it was Alex that linked this story, and I think my response to you was, and I'm surprised how. Because of course they shut down the negative reviews and they paid the positive reviews. I'm not surprised by this in the slightest. Including one of the people that was paid tens of thousands of dollars was YouTube's very own and beloved PewDiePie. I can't speak for that. I'm not subscribed to PewDiePie. So.
Bro, shields up.
I will admit, like, and I get this question here and there, like, why do you hate PewDiePie? I don't hate PewDiePie, but his content is not entertaining to me. So that's just, and yes, I get it. He does this pretty much the same thing that Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, all the other major ones do. It just doesn't resonate with me. I don't. His personality kind of grates me. I like him at cons. I don't like his videos. So, but at this point, back on there. So we actually had people. Now, PewDiePie is the only one I think that gets named in the actual story. But we had people getting paid to give positive reviews for Shadows of Mordor, which is really sad because everybody that I know that played it loved it. Loved a lot of the concepts in the game. And the only reason that I didn't pick it up was A, it was Lord of the Rings, and I was kind of done with the games at that point. But B, because of the controversy and the scandal that was going on with the people who wanted to get review copies, but couldn't unless they were willing to go through this and this and this and this embargo. And it also looks like, according to... and actually, the reason that we have this story is because they've reached a settlement with the FTC after they were being accused of hiding the payments from people.
Mm-hmm.
So already, that's even more dicey.
Yeah, for those who don't know, FTC stands for the Federal Trade Commission. They're kind of the people who oversee a lot of, like, they're kind of like the Better Business Bureau, except they have a little bit more power. Because while the Better Business Bureau is kind of a private entity, Federal Trade Commission is actually part of the government. So
yeah,
that's to kind of make that clear for people who may not know who the Federal Trade Commission is.
And it looks like the major problem that the FTC had was because they hid the fact that they paid these people for the reviews.
Mm-hmm. And hid the fact that it was a sponsored video, which is definitely becoming a bit of a sticking issue in recent history. I know Tom Scott recently addressed it in his YouTube Money series, and how the laws in Britain are different than in the US, because in Britain you're required by law to put in the video saying, oh, this is a sponsored video. Like, it's actual...
Which makes it an even bigger hot button on YouTube, given the whole CSGO Lotto problem is still ongoing at this point. So at that point, it's just like, oh, well, congratulations. PewDiePie got paid to give a positive review to a game that, I mean, is still a fairly good game, but it's still kind of dodgy that he wasn't willing to admit that this was a sponsored review. I mean, for crying out loud, Gerard... Because I think all of his Star Fox Zero stuff was sponsored by Nintendo, wasn't it, Alex?
No, it wasn't. I'm pretty certain even though he got to go sit down and meet like Miyamoto and people, he got to go to Nintendo, but I'm pretty sure his actual review of it and his most recent Let's Play for Super Beer Brothers is completely independent. Because Gerard is very transparent about when he's doing sponsored.
Okay, I thought at least the Miyamoto interview would have been Nintendo sponsored or something.
Yeah, that would have been Nintendo sponsored, but like the actual review itself, his completionist review for Star Fox Zero, is wholly independent.
Yeah, so at that point, I already know that, look, diehard PewDiePie fans are not going to care about this. But to the people who are following things like CSGO Lotto, this is going to be shady, and this is going to be an issue. And as much as I want to say that PewDiePie is going to take a hit from this, I don't think he is. I think he's going to be okay. But as the story kind of points out, he wasn't the only one. And there might be some lower-end people that might get hit by this, and hard, for their positive reviews. Let's see. So unfortunately, the only statistics in this article are for PewDiePie's, which is that the videos earned more than 5.5 million views for Warner Brothers, with PewDiePie subscribers accounting for 3.7 million of them.
Wow.
But unfortunately, we don't get another example of other people that have had this happen. And that's actually what I would like to be able to know, is who else was paid, and are they mid to upper class YouTubers or anything like I don't want to put YouTube into a class system, I really don't. But like, are we talking about other people like PewDiePie, or are we talking somebody more along the lines of I would say like the WoW community, because the WoW community are usually in the hundred thousands of subscribers, kind of thing.
Yeah, looking at the statistics that the article cites, and this is a BBC article, according to the gaming magazine Gama Sutra, I don't know how
Sutra, yeah.
Gama Sutra, Basically, it says that they found that out of more than 40 YouTubers who have more than 5,000 subscribers, only a quarter of that had taken money to produce sponsored content. And so I can see kind of why they're not like listing multiple names, and partially it might be because PewDiePie is the biggest target, so let's aim at him. But then the other thing could be like, well, we don't want to dig up a bunch of information about all these other YouTubers because, well, that would be very much akin to, well, McCarthyism at this point.
Yep. Are there any other... So that's pretty much all that we can cover on this story. It's unfortunate, but, well, not surprising as far as I'm concerned, with all the shady nature of what happened with the other stuff involving Shadows of Mordor. Are there any final thoughts that we want to add to this before we move to the next story?
I can get my thoughts here, but this is absolute bullshit here that, Warner Brothers went this far, and to any YouTubers who did take money and not publicly confess that it's a sponsored video. If you want to take money, then be transparent. Be open about it. Don't hide that fact. And I mean, Warner Brothers might have pressured you to be that. But if that's the case, then shame on you for taking that money, because that's the point when you got to say, no, my integrity and the faith of my audience is more important to me than what you're going to offer. Warner Brothers may have pockets of cash here. Other deals will come along. Don't surrender to this kind of bullshit temptation here. I know Alex, it's money. I know it's publicity, but don't do it. Keep the audience... What?
Alex, I have a confession.
Yeah.
I would have taken money to review Shadows of Mordor. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, if they paid me to do it, I mean, yeah, I do it, but I would definitely say this is a sponsored review and all that
I don't have
stuff.
a problem with taking money and doing sponsored content, as long as you're transparent about it. Be open about it. Don't hide the fact. And if the company above you is saying, don't tell anybody this, then don't do that. It's not worth it, because, this is a different media. We're in a whole different time, a whole different medium when it comes to YouTube. It's not like it's not like the old days of Hollywood where you can hide behind clouds of anonymity. Basically, you just be the filmmaker.
It's the internet. We can still hide behind clouds of anonymity.
Right. But my point is, when you're a video creator, your interaction with your audience is super important. And when your audience doesn't trust you, then you've lost. You have no business being on YouTube.
So I find it funny that one of the comments that we got here is, I think the Shadow Blazer would have taken more money from Sentai Filmworks. That might have been the case. And then he also brings up an interesting concept. I think paying money to some reviewers to give positive press or negative press is cheating and wrong. Normally, I would agree. I mean, if it's just like a first impressions video, I'm more along the lines of being able to do that. It's one of those reasons why I don't necessarily take review copies, or I don't sign up for press privileges or anything like that. I pay for the game. And it's part of the premise of why I do the reviews the way I do it. Yes, it's coming out of my pocket, and that sucks. But at that point, I'm not beholden to Nintendo. Like, I'm kind of surprised that Gerard kept things as transparent as he did. Because if I got invited down to Nintendo to meet Shigeru freaking Miyamoto, I'd feel really bad about saying anything negative about Star Fox Zero. I really would. And so that's why in a lot of cases I take this approach with my reviews, is that I pay for it, therefore I can say whether or not it's a justification for my money on whether or not I got a good deal out of it. And yeah, to some people that might seem kind of dumb, but to me right now at least works. But I can already tell you this much: if that happened, if I got sponsored by Blizzard, for crying out loud, for doing all the WoW videos, I'd be open about it. And I'd say Blizzard has contacted me, and this is what I'm doing, kind of thing. So let's go ahead and move on into the next story, which is a listener request, a lot of them, brought up for the Shadow Blazer.
Oh my God.
So, I think it's pretty much common knowledge that the Shadow Blazer hates Star Wars Battlefront.
To be clear, I hate EA's Battlefront.
Yes. Well, yeah, you like the original Battlefront. You just don't like this new rendition.
Yes.
And so at that point, I got a couple of stories here. I only linked one into our show notes, mainly because the other stories aren't a whole lot. we'll get into them in a second. But the one in particular was whether or not the Shadow Blazer would like this new announcement that they're going to offer an offline skirmish mode. You mean like what's already in the game?
Yeah, what's already in the game, alright. No, of course not. Duh.
So basically, you'll be able to play against bots in a solo mission or with a friend using split screen.
Split screen,
Again,
really?
it sounds to me like what they have in the game already.
Single player split screen? Are we serious?
Yeah, you can either do it as a solo mission against bots, or you can play with a friend using split screen.
So basically, it's just another one-player campaign added to the paper-thin one-player campaign.
I wouldn't even call it a campaign because it's going to be one of those missions that we did when we did the Dragon Shadow Try.
Yeah. Give me a break, EA.
Now, Skirmish has multiple difficulty levels, and you can play across two modes, namely Walker Assault and Fighter Squadron.
So again, it's exactly what's already in the game.
Yeah, but those are solid multiplayer maps. So you can basically play them with bots. Okay, but it's still Walker Assault. It's not like you're adding a campaign here, people. I hate to be a dork here, but this is not a campaign. This is not Galactic Conquest. This is none of the stuff that people have been demanding since this game came out!
Yeah.
Yes, this is EA Sports Battlefront. I agree.
It's just EA, you're just constantly pumping in more bullshit DLC to keep padding out the game because you released a shitty half-assed product onto the market that, okay, it looks pretty and it plays and it does play well, but it's still, at the end of the day, half the game it was from its 10-year-old predecessor.
Exactly. But wait, Alex, it gets better! Because there's so many other reasons for you to get into this game now. They've already announced that one of their new content patches is going to be about the Death Star. Where you can play in the Starfighters and the incredibly slow gameplay that we covered when we played the damn game before. Or even better, you can get such gripping new characters as Chewbacca and Bosk.
Okay.
How many... Raise of hands in the chat. How many people actually know who Bosk is?
I don't know who Bosk is.
Whoosh.
Do you want to know who he is? He's the dude when you have all the bounty hunters and the Star Destroyer, where, Vader says no disintegrations, and the one officer looks up and sees a lizard with, like, a rebel pilot outfit. That's Bosk.
One of those bizarre cases of a background character getting his own EU lore.
And the only reason one of the only reasons I can think of that they did that was his whole race got a bunch of lore in the Old Republic. Because you can actually get one of his race as a follower for one of the classes.
Okay, I make fun, but this is one of the reasons I do love the whole the idea the idea of the expanded universe is like some random background character who appears for 3 seconds can get his own whole freaking backstory to him and all this side material. This is the thing I really love, the idea of the Star Wars expanded universe. It's such creativity and such imagination. I appreciate that so much as a writer.
So at that point, we have all of this, and then on top of that, there's also an added bit of content where you can go to Bespin Cloud City. Again, just okay. And then finally, the other bit of content that got brought up was that they are going to be adding in Rogue One content to Battlefront. Well, no crap, Sherlock. Of course they were going to add Rogue One material. I could have told you that. I think they have Episode 8 and 9 material getting ready on the chopping block. As well as Battlefront 2, 3, 4, and 5.
We could have talked about the Rogue One sizzle reel instead of EA's Battlefront. We should be talking about that.
I know, right? We should be talking about the other Battlefront that's supposed to be doing so much better. And by the way, so somebody actually put in the chat, no sir. So this is EA. No sir, we won't give you a break. Here's a Kit Kat bar. I would add to that. Now give me that Kit Kat back. You've had your 5 seconds with it. That's basically what's happening here. So, Shadow Blazer and even Romney, thoughts and opinions on all of the stuff that's being announced for Battlefront. Do you give a crap?
Not really. I mean, when it came when it comes to my exposure to Star Wars games, I've just lost interest. I really have. I mean, especially it's like, oh, Battlefront. I remember I had fun with Battlefront 2. I absolutely enjoyed it, but
Yeah.
it's just it's pretty much everything wrong with the current video game industry, where it's like, oh, online multiplayer only because that's all everyone cares about. It's not like people care about things like, story or campaigns or being able to play with a friend and not have to be connected to the internet every single effing second.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. At the end of the day, sometimes I just want to play a game by my own lonely damn self. I don't want to go online and play with a million 13-year-olds who can call me Mary and shit.
And here's the thing. Online content, like for a game like an MMO, that makes sense. Because it needs to be online. Because it's constantly maintaining a connection to a server. I get that. But when I can play Overwatch, and granted, yes, my connection is still staying online with it, but when I can go into Overwatch and play with bots and know it's not requiring my online connection that much, that's saying something. When you actually can make it so that certain things aren't actually affecting your bandwidth or your internet connection as much as as far as EA is concerned, they have to, then it already tells me that maybe people need to rethink this whole concept. Especially Xbox. I mean, Xbox should be screaming at people in some cases where they were the ones that had that whole controversy about your console is on and online all the time, and they had to get rid of that feature. And now we have all of these game companies who are basically doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said this way back when the Xbox One was announced and all these features about the whole online all the time and this really strict DRM bullshit was going on. I remember saying this in one of our Dragon Shadow videos. It's like, if you buy the Xbox One at this point, then what the hell's wrong with you, more or less? It's just you're asking for this trouble here by doing that because you're funding them. You're saying this is all right. It's not all right. Stop paying for mediocre content.
Or broken. Mediocre is I think you're giving them way too much credit, Alex, because most of that content's coming out broken.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts before we move on here. I know that people wanted Alex to go into a 100% more rage, but that's the most you're going to get for. He doesn't care. That's kind of my point on this matter too. The thing that would make me care about Battlefront would be to announce these features, and also an apology for Peter What's-His-Bucket to come out and say, "We get it. We still make single-player games. I shouldn't have said that stuff. I'm a duty head."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But until the evil Empire EA is overthrown by the Rebellion and the EA Death Star is destroyed, that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I promise I wouldn't. There isn't really a rebellion against EA. We're kind of at the point of it's not like, oh, there's an organized rebellion. We're more like in the French Revolution where everything's so disorganized. We've cut off the head of the king, but no one knows who's in charge.
Yep, and I agree with the chat. It is up to people if they want to buy the game or not necessarily us. But here's the thing: we can vote with our dollar and say we don't want this. So
and that's what we're doing because we don't want it.
Well, technically I didn't because I bought it, but I actually have got that up on the chopping block. It's going to go get exchanged at some point. I have quite a few games that are going to get exchanged by the end of the year. So moving on to the next story here, which is our Nintendo Talk segment. No, it's not about Pokemon Go. I'm not talking about Pokemon Go. I'm sorry, guys.
Don't abuse it, people. We do Nintendo Talk, but we don't want it. We don't want it to become Pokemon Talk because, there's more than just Pokemon to Nintendo. I speak as a disgruntled Fire Emblem fan.
And at this point, the story that got linked here was linked by a couple of listeners. And I get why people are kind of excited, but in some cases, I actually, after reading some of the comments going, and actually having to explain to them that these features are not available for this, then they got a little disappointed. So we should all be cheering this week because we got a console announcement. Yay! We got a console announcement. I'm sure it will be absolutely awesome. Oh, wait, it's a mini NES. Okay. So somebody actually commented to me and said, "This is the NX." I am totally offended by it. And you know what? I would be too.
3 years of rumors. This is the NX. It's just a
This is
mini
the
NX.
NX. This is the quote revolutionary system. Look out, world! Here it is.
Just watching this is like a KLF level of a statement saying, "Oh yeah, this is our brand new console." Maybe it would be like a weird artistic statement saying, "Hey, we're just gonna release all the games people actually like and not make a new console because you know what? That's what people care about. They don't care about stuff anymore. We're done. We're just gonna stop making consoles. Here's software. We're gonna go and just hide in our corner with our hoard of Pokemon Go money."
Yeah. So here's basically what the mini NES is. So this got announced, and it's basically this. It is a $60 miniature Nintendo Entertainment System. So the original console, the one that started it all. But it's not necessarily a console, people. It is the best way to describe it is if you go to your local Best Buy 10 years ago, and you found those little arcade cabinets that were Miss Pac-Man, and you could only play Miss Pac-Man on them. That's what this basically is.
Yeah, it's a plug-and-play console. That's pretty much what it is.
So it's basically, this console is plug-and-play, and it's got an HDMI connection, so you can play them via HDMI, but it comes it's not like you can put cartridges in it, which was actually a question I got. No, you can't put cartridges in it. It's smaller. And it comes preloaded with 30 NES games. Now, granted, the games that it comes with are pretty freaking awesome. You do have awesome games like Castlevania and Simon's Quest. And you also have Final Fantasy, and Ghosts and Goblins, and Gradius, and Kirby's Adventure, Mega Man 2, Metroid. All of these games come preloaded with it. But here's where it actually got a lot of confusion, because somewhere down the line, people thought that this actually came with an internet connection. So you could actually connect to the Nintendo Network Virtual Console and download more. Yes, people actually asked me if that was accurate. No, it's not, people. This is a very basic plug-and-play console. I hate to be the guy that has to burst your bubble, because you know what? If it did actually offer access, but like limited it to NES only, I'd be okay with it. Because then at that point, somebody could actually say, I only love the NES anyway, and I don't want to own the cartridges. If I could download NES games, I'd be fine with it. But no, that's not what this thing can do. It is a nice little toy, which comes preloaded with 30 games. Okay? That's what it is. I hate to burst your bubble. That's what it is. That being said, let's kind of open things up for opinions. Am I like the first thing I want to ask people is, are you going to buy it?
No.
No.
You'd think that I would be buying it, but no. And it's mainly because all of the games that they offer, at least most of them, are available via Virtual Console.
Mm-hmm.
And I could buy that for cheaper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, plus there's also...
Granted, if you totaled them up, I'd be paying more. But it's just one of those things where I can get it now anyway, so it doesn't really appeal to me. I know of friends and family who are going to go get it because, well, it's nostalgia for them. And I get it. That's your $60.
Yeah, and at the same time, given that we all own consoles with Virtual Console access, it also gives us, well, if there are certain games on this list that we don't want, we don't have to pay for them. Because as fun as it may be to play the original Final Fantasy, the NES version hasn't aged nearly as well as, say, a Dawn of Souls or the one for PSP, which actually fixed some of the problems the NES version had. And so I can see why they're doing it, because it's like, oh, well, we need a cheaper option to rush out ahead of the holiday season that people can just buy as like a nice little novelty toy. Like, oh, grandma's visiting her grandkids and she needs to buy a quick present. It's like, okay, what's a nice little present I can get little Billy for Christmas? Oh, there's this old Nintendo thing. I remember this from back when my son was obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And
it's one of those things where I agree with the chat. I'm okay with the plug and play because, you know, this is a cheaper answer than buying a current day console. If you just want to be able to have that quick nostalgia trip, and here's the thing, kids are going to get loads of entertainment out of these games. I have no problem admitting that. But at that point, that's where the glamour ends. Okay, because it's not like you can get more games out of it. You have these 30 games, and that's it. That's pretty much it. And as much as I would like to be able to say for nostalgia reasons only, I would buy it, I can't do it.
Yeah, especially $60. That's kind of where I kind of tilt my head a little bit, because a lot of these plug-and-play consoles, even the one that I have sitting on my shelf here,
yeah,
that's this official one from Namco, it wasn't like $60. It was like 20. Like, I'd pay 20 for something like this. I wouldn't pay 60.
Oh, no. I mean, for crying out loud, the crappy ones that, like, JonTron reviewed way back when, he paid less for them.
Yeah.
And they came with a complete NES library.
Yeah, and that goes with the reason why I think Nintendo is doing this, is to counteract the piracy rampant on a lot of those plug-and-play consoles. I remember back at Valley Fair Mall, there used to be a full-on kiosk that would advertise a lot of these games that had, like, all these NES stuff on it. And I can see why Nintendo's thinking, okay, well, people are already stealing our games to put on these plug-and-play consoles. Let's just release an official one, so that way we have one with an official Nintendo quality seal of approval. And I do like that they also have the option, because it comes with an NES controller. It's a wireless NES controller that you can connect to your Wiimote for the Wii U and Wii for use as a classic controller. And that is something I do like that they actually added, and you can even buy those controllers separately if you don't want to actually shell out the $60 for the controller. You can actually buy the controller separately for only $10. Now that I might actually get, because I'm thinking, okay, if I want to just play an NES game and have an actual NES feel, I'll just buy the $10 controller, not the $60 plug-and-play console I'll never use.
But I will admit, out of theory, one great idea has come out of this. If people don't want to buy a Wii U or an NX, it might actually be cool to get something along the lines of, I'm using this as purely a theory here, like an Ouya, where you don't have access to all the current console games, but you would have access to the virtual console and be able to purchase the games that you grew up with. That might, and in some cases, that might be a cheaper console to make, and with a Nintendo seal of approval, that'd be even better. And I'd probably approve of that. I wouldn't get it. I'd get the current day console. But for people who want to just live their nostalgic memories, I would totally endorse that. I think that'd be an awesome idea.
Yeah, it would work, but it would be kind of hard to maintain, because Sega tried this way back in the day with the Sega Channel. Granted, it would work a lot better now that internet technology and cable technology has gotten a lot more advanced, but it's kind of a case, would there be enough demand that would prompt Nintendo to actually have the servers maintained, create a new OS that would allow them to navigate this virtual console service? And would they do one with NES, one for SNES? Would they try to go the retro route and say, oh, you can buy this deluxe model that allows you to play?
That's more along the lines of what I was suggesting, is that it would be one that could download whatever. As long as it was on the virtual console, it could get it.
Yeah, and just by that same token, it's kind of, well, why go through the trouble of creating all these tiered, smaller machines that are probably going to cost up to at least like hundreds of dollars, when they can just, you can get it on your new Nintendo console, you get new games, but you always have this option, and that's the tricky thing, because I remember how much of a battle it was when people were wanting them to do the SNES and GBA games on the 3DS, and how they had to kind of go do the various workarounds to get that to work. And so I can see the idea, and there is some merit to it. It's just I don't see Nintendo doing like a full-on, maybe as a subscription service, but not really as like a separate console service.
Okay. Alex, your thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess for, as a sort of cheap, semi-cheap, quick gift, it's okay. Otherwise I would just say, for most people, either for like most of the harder core gamers out there, or people who really want to get back into like the NES days, because maybe they're like me and they missed out on the whole NES, because I had a SNES but not the original NES. In that case, I'd almost say, well, you're probably better off buying an original NES. They're probably like $140 on Amazon, or you could probably find them cheaper if you really shop around, and buy a few handful of games to also go with it. I know some games can get ludicrously expensive when collectors sometimes jack up prices, but otherwise there's a fair amount of probably some quality NES games out there that you can probably find reasonably on the cheap. So for the harder core, for the people who really, I think, want to get back into the NES, who never got to experience it firsthand, that's more the route I'd say go, rather than a pre-bundled small console.
Yeah, that's really the downside here is that I mean for nostalgic reasons it's awesome. I would love to be able to have a mini NES in my household, but um, unfortunately the 30 games that they're bringing up, a lot of them are available via the Virtual Console, so I can't really justify that myself.
Yeah,
Um,
and in some regards, I can see somewhat of a justification. I mean, for example, I have a niece. She's like 3 years old. My older brother's been trying to get her into video games, but the problem is the selection of games he has with the really complex controls that are on the Xbox makes things kind of difficult to actually get her to actually play on her own rather than just more or less having her hold the Player 2 controller while he does most of the work. And so, as a gift for like a smaller child who you don't want navigating the internet on the console, I can see this being a nice gift. Like, oh, you like video games? Here's a smaller thing. That way I don't have to worry about you being solicited on the internet or getting yelled at by a bunch of 12-year-olds or 12-year-old man-children trapped in the bodies of 30-somethings. So,
well, and to be perfectly honest, a lot of the games that they're listing right here and now, of these 30 games, you can get tons of hours as a kid out of them. I mean, the first two Zelda games alone are on this, and if you don't know what you're doing in Zelda, you've got hours in there. Super C will frustrate you, and you're gonna be playing that for days, just trying to be able to beat it and get good at it, kind of thing.
same case with Ninja Gaiden and Ghosts and Goblins, because
Yeah, Ghosts and Goblins, Ninja Gaiden, the Mario games alone will add hours of entertainment for you.
yeah. And even something like Final Fantasy, which has like a long amount of time that you actually have to take to beat it. Granted, the NES version hasn't aged particularly well, but it's like, hey, say you're a Final Fantasy fan and you want to introduce your kid to a simpler version and you don't want to insult their intelligence with Mystic Quest, this is a good way to go.
I like Mystic Quest. I do. That's why it was my first Let's Play. There you go. Dig into Drax's history. His first Let's Play for the Legacy of Final Fantasy was Mystic Quest, because that was technically the first RPG I ever beat. But I agree with you there, and also to the people who like are Pokemon fans. Well, you can point out Final Fantasy to them and say, well, this is kind of the roots. This is when a lot of the things that you like about Pokemon were being established. So that's a whole other RPG that you can get into. I will admit I'm kind of surprised Dragon Warrior got left out of that, but well, there's still plenty of games to be able to get loads of entertainment out of in this bundle.
Yeah, and keep in mind, a lot of these are third-party, so licensing must have been a bit of a pain, which is probably why the price is jacked up as high as it is. Because, I mean, you've got ones from Konami, Square. I'm just looking here. Konami, Square, Capcom. They have a lot of third-party titles. So the fact they went out of their way, that's probably the real reason why it's $60 is because, we have to pay all these other game companies this licensing fee to basically put their games on this little machine.
Yeah, you have Bubble Bobble, which is Taito. You have Konami. You have Square.
You got Tecmo.
Capcom. You got Tecmo in there. You've got Namco in there. I'm not sure who owns Star Tropics now.
That's Nintendo.
That's Nintendo. Okay. Yeah, so you got a lot of Nintendo-based games, but you also have a lot of other games that are third-party, and therefore they had to pay a good enough sum to be able to get them. All right, so final thoughts before we move on into the entertainment portion of this evening.
Well, I guess keep an eye out for this come Christmas time, because that's why they're releasing it in November, ahead of Black Friday. So my advice, don't trample an old lady just to get this on Black Friday.
My final advice is, you can either take this news, or you can take the negative news that Nintendo has already said the NX won't be a Tokyo Game Show. Which one do you want?
Look at the pretty bunny.
Mm-hmm. I found it a little convenient that a week before this announcement, they announced they wouldn't be a Tokyo Game Show, because again, they're going to do the NX reveal on their own event, and then they do this mini NES. And I'll admit, I halfway giggled when people actually thought that this was the NX.
Oh my god, 3 years of rumors and it all led up to the mini NES!
Sorry, guys. I know you were expecting next-gen gameplay and dem graphics, but, well, 8 bits!
Yeah,
all right.
I can even... And again, that's why I compared it to the KLF. For those of you who don't know, KLF is like this British group that famously burned 1 million British pounds and literally at the end of like one concert said KLF have left the music industry. And I'm just thinking, is this Nintendo's way of saying, we're not going to bother, people are going to pay for the same old crap, so you know what, here's the well-designed games, we're not going to bother anymore.
Yes. I'm moving on. I don't know what else to add to that, Ronnie. So that's actually going to go ahead and do it for our tech portion. Now, if we actually do run a little short, we do have some stories in the wings, so people don't worry about that. Your story may be covered. It's just I wanted to make sure that we got these done first. And the first one for our entertainment portion was kind of in connection to what we talked about last week, about Fox and Marvel apparently being in talks, because now there's talk about a Marvel X-Men series that is going to be headed up by Matt Nix. And for people who don't know Matt Nix, if you've watched the series Burn Notice, then you know who Matt Nix is. He is the writer for Burn Notice, and it looks like he is going to be part of this X-Men action-adventure series. Now, before people fly off the handle and go, oh my gosh, we're going to get an X-Men series, what do you think of when you think of X-Men?
I think of Welcome to Die.
That too. Cyclops, Wolverine, Jean Grey. That's not what you're getting here, people. No. If anything, you're getting something similar to a Jubilee situation. And by that, I mean first episode Jubilee situation.
Yeah, or more accurately, you're probably getting something closer to Mutant X, that failed TV series they had to revamp at the 11th hour because of a lot of copyright disputes.
Damn it, Romney. I got that out of my brain, and you brought it back.
You're welcome.
So basically what this series would be based around is two parents discovering that their kid has mutant powers and basically having this ongoing struggle of trying to keep those powers in check and keep them under the radar. And that's pretty much it. There's talk about, maybe we'll bring in people like Xavier School for the Gifted to maybe talk to this person, and the parents deny it because they don't want their kid to be a mutant. That's pretty much the premise of what has been considered for this show.
So it's basically Bobby Drake's backstory and the context of the movies. That's pretty much what we're getting.
Like I said, episode 1, it's a Jubilee situation. It's where you're dealing with Jubilee's parents. Somebody actually put Professor X or Wheels as they call it. Yes, that's all you get to see of Professor X, Alex, is the wheelchair. That's all you get to see.
It's the wheelchair.
That's all they can afford.
Sorry, it's just one of my favorite lines from the first X-Men.
What do they call you, Wheels?
What do they call you? Wheels.
So at that point, and one of the things that is being considered for this is that this would mark the first Marvel series at Fox, because the two series that they've done with superheroes have been more on the DC side, citing Gotham and Lucifer being those series. Now, to my knowledge, and I don't watch Gotham, so people will have to clarify this for me, I didn't hear that Gotham was doing very well compared to the CW series.
I honestly haven't been paying attention because I only casually looked at Gotham back when Lucifer was going through its season because, well, I have an easier time getting into Lucifer than I do Gotham because, for the love of God, you obviously want to make a Batman series, make a goddamn Batman series, and quit jerking our chain by just having all the villains.
Yeah, that's pretty much what Gotham is. It's teasing Batman villains, and that's great and all, but there's no Batman in it, and so it's hard to get behind. So I find it interesting that they bring up Gotham right next to this X-Men series, and can I just say my opinion here? This isn't X-Men.
Yeah.
This is Jubilee the show. This is Bobby Drake the show before he became Iceman.
Except using an even lesser known mutant. I mean, they may even. I mean, off the top of my head, they probably may even go with I don't know the name of the character, but the one who's the focus of worst X-Men ever would be probably the one they focus on.
Yeah, they would focus on something that would be easy enough to animate if they had to do CG, but at the same time would not be so cumbersome in their lives. So, I mean, one of the ones that came to my mind was maybe like Spike, would be an interesting one where all of a sudden he starts growing spikes out of his body and they have to get rid of the spikes, kind of thing. But like, if you were expecting Storm in this series, you're not getting it. There's no way they could do that.
Yeah,
that's my thing. I don't like the idea of this plot either because it's just not interesting. I get it. You can't necessarily do the A-list X-Men team of Storm and Jean Grey. Fair enough, fine. But let's see some other interesting mutants. Why can't we get some more other? I don't know many other mutants. Unfortunately, this is how sad I am when it comes to X-Men. But
Alex, I'm going to dissuade you right now. There's so many mutants in the Marvel universe. Don't try. Just don't.
But, why can't we see some other kids from Xavier's School for the Gifted?
Yeah.
Why can't we get Shadowcat? Why can't we get Jubilee? I don't know. Rogue is kind of iffy because of the movie. She's kind of.
I don't want Rogue because then you'd have an emo teen story.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much what the show's gonna. That's what the show's gonna be, though, is emo teen story because it's just we already have that subtext with the Bryan Singer movies, and that's pretty much what they're going to obviously cater toward, because who obviously are they going to be competing with? The CW. And so it's going to be like, well, let's put some emo teen angst here.
I find it funny, so somebody said at least Marvel and DC are together for once. No. They really aren't.
No.
They really aren't. I have a feeling that the people behind Gotham, they're not going to care about this because it's in pilot development. They're only asking right now for a pilot, people.
Yeah.
That's how far in development this is.
Well, yeah, plus one thing that people don't really realize about how television works is that the television network doesn't necessarily make all the shows. There's a lot of shows that air on Fox that are made by Warner Brothers. One of the most recent examples would be Gotham or Fringe. Both of those shows were made by Warner Brothers, but aired on a Fox network because Warner Brothers basically sold the shows to Fox. And so it's kind of a case of, they're not together. Gotham is still being produced. Gotham and Lucifer are still being produced by companies run by Warner Brothers. They just happen to be airing on Fox because that's the network that picked up the shows.
Clarify this for me. Wasn't Hellblazer also a Fox series before it got canceled?
I think it was on FX.
It was on FX.
Which is owned by Fox, but it's similar. It was on FX, which is owned by Fox. That's where things get kind of complicated, but that's how it works. Because I remember listening to an interview with a TV writer who, when he was in an interview to write for a show that was being produced by Fox, he mentioned how he loved Fringe, but that basically killed his chances of being hired because Fringe wasn't produced by Fox, but was produced by Warner Brothers, and was more or less like the equivalent of standing on their desk and taking a huge dump.
Yep. Now, I'm already getting at least one question about, how is Marvel involved in this? They are actually, so according to the story and many others, they're actually reaching out to Marvel to film this.
Sort of. It says that Marvel's more or less going to be financing it, while 20th Century Fox is actually going to be doing the actual production.
What about Negasonic Teenage Warhead? Are we talking about the girl from Deadpool?
Yup.
Sure,
that would be awesome, but there's no way that they'd bring her in here because she's already slated for Deadpool 2.
Honestly, seeing the premise, I'm just saying this is basically just one of the components from Runaways. Is that basic story? Is that the two parents who find out that their daughter is a mutant, and it's so it's basically that character from Runaways.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things so let's just say for the sake of argument, let's theorize here. Marvel gets approached by this and asked to actually film it. What is the likelihood that we would actually have Marvel say, screw that, we're going to make a worthwhile X-Men pilot and try and get that on Fox instead?
Here's what would probably actually happen, is that it wouldn't be so much, we're going to make our own pilot. Well, they'll probably just we'll film this for you if you give us the rights back.
Which they won't do, which immediately cancels out this deal.
Yeah, that's pretty much the thing, is that they're like, we'll shoot it, but you'll have to go agree to a similar arrangement we have with Sony.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's where I actually think this whole deal will end up in the dust. Because at that point, Fox is already having some popularity with the X-Men movies, and Deadpool did really well. So they're not going to... they'll let go of Fantastic Four. They'd probably put that up on the negotiating table. But that would be it. They're not putting X-Men up on that table.
And even then, not really, because their relations with Marvel have been very spiteful, which is why even with bad movies, they're just like, we're still going to make them just so that we keep it out of Marvel's hands.
Pretty much. Just like last week, I said go watch Midnight's Edge, all about all the Spider-Man and Fox history and Marvel. It's a messy relationship between them. They do not like each other.
Yeah.
But at that point, at least we can. So, I don't want to be the guy to crush people's hopes. I know that I would love to have an X-Men TV series. I would love to be able to have that. And I actually like the idea that's being brought up here. Bring in the younger mutants to be able to spotlight that, including Negasonic Teenage Warhead. Bring her in as kind of a plug-in from Deadpool. But that's just not in the works here. That's not what they're going to go for. And that's the sad part of it. But I mean, at least there are already some really good series out there that are Marvel based that are at least going to be able to tide you over while this crap is going on. I mean, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., from what I understand, Season 3 was really good. If you have Netflix at all, you have access to Daredevil, you have access to Jessica Jones, both really good series. I just barely finished Jessica Jones, and I'm halfway through Daredevil Season 2. You have Luke Cage to be able to look forward to. You have Iron Fist. You have the Defenders. You have lots there. Yes, I know it's not X-Men, but, well...
Well, keep in mind...
I've just kind of gotten used to the idea that there's never going to be any developments with X-Men.
Yeah, plus, honestly, I think it's actually better for the Marvel Cinematic Universe if they never get the X-Men back, because the X-Men are probably the biggest contradiction to the Marvel Universe, because you've got all these superheroes saving the world on a frequent basis, and then you've got the mutants that are pretty much doing the exact same thing, and yet they're hated for some reason. Now, granted, some storylines actually address that fairly well, especially how insane Cyclops kind of gets when he basically becomes the second Magneto. But It's very much a case of, I don't want to get that whole continuity tangled up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's a hard enough time keeping up the movies as they come out.
And I just have to say, TG5455, don't crush my hopes. I really want Marvel to get Fantastic Four back because we need a decent Doctor Doom. Damn it.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm done with Fantastic Four.
I think even more...
Doom must live.
Honestly, that's kind of one of the worries I have of another Marvel property that I want to see given an adaptation, but I'm afraid of how Marvel would handle it, and that would be Power Pack, because Power Pack's storylines are tied heavily to Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And, I mean, honestly, if they were to do Power Pack, I'd rather see Disney do it kind of like what they did with Big Hero 6, where they just take the concept and then run with it on their own.
It's one of those things that I've actually seen a lot of people talking about. Like, there's rumors going around that Marvel's going to do something with the Skrulls. And I already can tell you, I don't think they can, because I think that Fox has got enough of those rights, given the plot line they did with Rise of the Silver Surfer, to be able to say that they had the rights to Super Skrull. So at that point, what can you do with the Skrulls without that key player? I don't know if you can, and frankly, I don't know if you should, because the Skrulls were really I believe the Skrulls were more featured in Fantastic Four than they were anywhere else, where the Kree got more of a feature in other comics. So at that point, that's kind of my concern with it. I don't know if I would necessarily want the Skrulls if you can't get Super Skrull.
Unless I create a new character called Hyper Skrull.
Hyper Mega Skrull? And he's just Goku? Okay. I might be okay with that. Fox has 2 more strikes and 1 more screw up and they're out of there.
Yeah.
That makes me sad at the same time, because both of those screws ups have had a bad Doctor Doom.
Yeah, and that I don't see this deal going through very easily. Not without, I mean, if it makes it to air, that it's not going to be without a lot of concessions being made, both on Fox's part and Marvel's part. More on Fox's part, because Marvel's the one with the bargaining power here. They're the ones with the money. Fox is going to them. And so it's very much... This may be Marvel's way of trying to orchestrate an arrangement similar to what they did to Sony with Spider-Man, basically, oh, you want this show? Okay, agree to our terms.
Which, given that justification, Fox has no negotiating point, because Marvel has already tried to substitute out mutants with the Inhumans. So at that point, because I've heard the Inhumans movie bouncing back and forth where it is going to happen, it isn't going to happen, but the fact that they put it in as a TV plot line in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. already tells me they've figured out a workaround to not having mutants in the Marvel Universe. Instead, we have Inhumans. And that's their justification there. That way they don't have to explain why mutant saturation isn't there.
And
So-
honestly, the universe just makes much more sense without the existence of mutants in the Marvel universe. It really does, because
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, especially when one of the major storylines involves the Red Skull stealing Xavier's brain. That's when you just realize, yeah, this is just getting too crazy.
So, final thoughts before we move on to the next story here, people, because unfortunately, aside from the negotiating prospects of this story, there isn't a whole lot of hope for it, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's not going to make it past development. I mean, maybe we'll see like a shot pilot that gets leaked around through a bootleg DVD, much like the NBC Wonder Woman pilot, and that'll be pretty much it.
So, Alex, final thoughts?
Got nothing more to say on it, really.
Okay. So the next story that we have here is once again a reminder that both me and Romney have a bullseye on our faces. Because, well, we reviewed the 2016 edition of Ghostbusters. We weren't kind to it, you might say. We tried to be kind, and as much as I've actually said in the review, I wanted to like it. I really did. I wanted to walk in and have no issues with it and say it is the greatest thing since sliced bread and move on. But that's not what happened.
Nope.
I'm at least thankful to say I wasn't the only one, because reviewer Richard Roper for the Chicago Sun-Times also gave it a bad review, probably skewered it worse than we did.
Mm-hmm.
One of the quotes that can actually be said is, "How could so many talented, well-meaning artists who clearly loved and respected the original produce such a raggedy-looking, thuddingly unfunny, utterly unnecessary reboot?" This is quoted from Richard Roper. Needless to say, the internet was not happy about his comments.
Nope.
So much so that the Twitter posts that we have up here are fairly tasteful. I went and did my own homework, people, and they weren't so kind. To say this guy got threatened would be light. I think they actually even had a sexist movement threaten to march on his doorstep. I think in all cases, every movement wanted to march on his doorstep. But let's go ahead and get into some of them, shall we? So, for example, we have Richard Roper, your Ghostbusters review was in poor taste, mean-spirited, and worthy of a lowly film blog. You can dislike a film, but come on. That's riveting criticism of his review. Or even better, hey, Richard Roper, you got a horrible taste. You physically look like that group of old sad men who are mad at Ghostbusters. Great reviews. Riveting. Subtle. Nuanced.
This one I like because it reminds me of a lot of the comments I got on Mad Max, where it's like, you were unfairly harsh towards Ghostbusters. Do you even care about equality? Clearly you don't. Write another review. I mean, really.
I find it funny that his name is Eyes Wide Shut because, well, that made me think about sharding.
Yeah, and honestly, that's something that always gets annoying. It's like, oh, where people's like, oh, you didn't watch it the right way the first time. I would watch it again and give it another look. Or, oh, write another review, one that agrees more with what I think. And so I can empathize.
Oh, you mean like those those third-rate journalists that ripped James Rolfe apart?
Yeah.
For saying he wasn't even going to go.
Yeah,
you didn't review it. He wasn't going to go.
Yeah.
And yes, I appreciate this comment. And every man and woman on YouTube that made review videos don't like the new Ghostbusters movie. You're not alone, Roper. No, you're not.
No, you're not.
I've already seen at least 5 reviews on Ghostbusters from prominent YouTubers, and they're all not happy. Which is really sad because the sequel is pretty much assured.
Unfortunately.
Because it's Sony.
Yeah, well, unless this film has a disastrous drop in the coming weeks. Like, if it has a disastrous drop that not even the worldwide box office can save it, then they'd have reasons to sweat.
Well, this movie's already banned in China, so there goes half their market now.
Yeah.
Why'd it get banned?
Because it has ghosts in it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
As a Blizzard fan, you'd think I'd know that.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's already half the market, but I don't know. I'm sticking to my guns here. I really do think that Sony is giving in a way of giving the middle finger to those who didn't like this idea, have a sequel paid for.
Yeah.
Just because.
But
Well-
at the same time, given what Sony's gone through in recent history, they are not really in a position where they could be making decisions and financing multi-million-dollar movies just to spite people. I mean, the Sony hack set them back considerably, and so
Yeah.
they're probably needing to be a little bit smarter with some of their decisions. And so maybe they have a sequel lined up, but then again, it's probably more lined up. It's like, okay, if this makes this much money to the point where we're able to actually make a profit, then we'll get it moving. But if not, then we'll just shelve it.
Yeah, so kind of bringing things back to Richard Roper, and I mean, my opinion is fairly clear. The guy doesn't like the movie, and he should not be shredded for not liking it. In fact, one of the things I do like is not only did we get posts from other people who are pissed off at him, we got Twitter comments from Richard Roper himself. And my favorite one is, I can't overestimate the fucks I don't give about a troll who's never been paid a dime for his opinion telling me how to review movies.
Yeah.
Bravo, Richard Roper. That's amazing.
It sums it all up. I mean, as much as I would like to be able to say that that I got paid for being able to review Ghostbusters, this guy did. This guy got paid to go and review the movie, and frankly, nobody gives a crap. Or everybody wants to rip him a new one, but he's better than all of us. He walked away with some bank from it.
Yep. Plus, there's really the main point that I think everyone needs to understand, and it's something that I've been saying to the point of it being ad nauseum, where just because something is being progressive doesn't mean it gets a free pass.
Sorry,
I mean,
I'm responding here because I find it funny that like Sony's marketing strategy for Ghostbusters bit them right in the ass, which is appropriate considering the movie is a marketing campaign.
Yeah, and really, that's the thing, is that a lot of people think, oh, we should support it because it stars women, because I had to field a lot of these comments. They didn't comment on YouTube, but they brought them to my face when I was reviewing Lucy, because like, oh, it's an action movie starring a female protagonist, you should support it. But I'm just like, no, because the film's a piece of crap. And that's the same case here, is that, yeah, it stars all women, but it's undeniably flawed, and really, it's not a good movie. It really isn't. And this is coming from someone who even actually somewhat liked it coming out of it.
Yeah, that's the thing that I find it interesting, especially when those comments start coming through. And I make it sound like we've got bullseyes on our chest, but we really don't. I've received some negative comments. I don't know about you, Romney, but I've received a few negative comments saying I didn't give the movie a chance, and I know that I did. And that's the funniest part of this whole thing, is that I was going in there wanting this to be good and came out not liking it, and you came in with nothing and you actually liked it.
Yeah, to a point, and I liked it despite some of the things they shoehorned in, not because of it. I mean, the fan service, you didn't need the cameos. Just to give them thing, you didn't need the cameos, and they really shouldn't have done the whole, oh, F you haters throughout most of the movie, because, well...
Oh,
no.
yeah. Oh, my gosh. This movie, I'm trying very hard to... Okay, guys, go see the videos. You'll get more details here, but I cannot hammer this enough. This movie has pretty much proven to me that if you're going to go and make a movie, you need to have a solid Twitter, Facebook, all social networking shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as those writers got hold of all of that, that shaped how this movie's humor was going to go.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Richard Roper's right. It's not funny. It's mean-spirited. It's hateful.
Yep. Or alternately, go the Simon Pegg route, and just, even if you see it, it's like, I don't care. Just basically go full steam ahead. Damn the consequences, damn what everyone else says. And that's why I have nothing but absolute respect for Simon Pegg and how the people at Star Trek Beyond have been handling criticisms, where they're just like, okay, we respectfully disagree, we're still going to make the movie
here's
the way
the thing.
we want.
Some of the reviews are already coming out for Beyond. I've seen mostly positive, but there are negative ones out there. And Pegg has taken them with a thicker skin than the people who did Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm.
That's the saddest part about this whole thing, is that granted, Star Trek Beyond has not had the level of exposure that this has. Their trailer came out like 6 months later, and even though the people didn't like it, thought it was Star Trek Mad Max, they still were getting some positive reception from it. This thing, unfortunately, has been getting 80% negative criticism criticism for it.
Yeah, and not even
these
just
writers
with the
didn't have the thick skin to be able to handle it.
Nope, and that's the thing. This was been from like day one when the concept was even just barely like thought of in a boardroom, and it somehow leaked. And really that's the big problem, is that they let the real world get to them, and that's what ultimately hurt it. And if you want more details about kind of the specific problems we had, go watch our videos, because we've said all we really need to say, and we kind of want to move on. That's why I went out and bought the originals, just so that I could actually watch it. I mean, it made me interested in the franchise, I'll give it that, but it's very much a case of, I'd rather watch something where they actually did the ideas right. And a lot of people think, oh, but all-female team? Well, look at the comics. The comics have actually done the idea of having female Ghostbusters, and have done it in a way that, is actually respectful to the franchise, actually adds something to the universe, actually tells a good story.
Can't wait to see the Ghostbusters movie at a bargain bin in Walmart.
And before people ask, no, I'm not going to do a Monster Clash with this version of Ghostbusters, because it is in such a nebulous place of whether it's a remake, reboot, or a sequel. I'm not even going to bother. It's the same reason why I won't do Friday the 13th, because it's in the same mixed-up situation.
Yeah, exactly. So bringing things back to Richard Roeper, and I know we've said this plenty of times even before the James Rolfe incident, but guys, people have a right to be able to not like this. They have a right to like it and to not like it. And it's actually been really bothering me that as soon as you come out with any kind of negative criticism towards this movie, you are instantly misogynist. You are instantly sexist for it. The funniest part is that in a lot of cases, the person who is, and granted it's Twitter and it's Facebook messages from trolls and things like that, usually the people who are calling you sexist are the ones uttering the sexist comments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I will always stand by the fact that we have been covering this for a long time, and the last thing that was bothering us at all with these films was that they had 4 women cast as the cast. Okay? I would dare say that this movie went way more sexist as far as I'm concerned, but you guys can go into the details on the discussion. But we should not be filleting Richard Roeper for having a negative opinion on it. Frankly, if I did not have Romney there to kind of cull my rage, I would have been saying crap just as harshly as Richard Roeper. I really would have. That movie, I agree with Richard Roeper. It was not funny. I did not walk away laughing at virtually any of the jokes. Yeah, there were jokes that I found were funny, but not ones that I was outright laughing out loud.
Yeah.
At all. So at that point, I agree with this guy, and like I said, if I hadn't gone with Romney, I would have had tons more hate to spew on this film. But we should not be getting on his case because of that.
Yeah.
Plus and calling him sexist or whatever.
Yeah, and plus, as someone who actually would identify as a feminist, first off, feminism is not just an all or nothing ideal. There's different versions of feminism within that term, but really, jumping down someone's throat for having a negative opinion about a film that doesn't do a good job of telling a story, of being funny, of showing any respect to the source material, by basically saying, oh, no, it should get a free pass, if anything, that's more destructive than someone simply criticizing a film that's a bad film, because it shows, oh, well, women, having women leading in films, it means that we have to dumb down all the male characters because women can't handle being put in the same scene as a fully competent man. Or, oh, women can only be cast in these sort of really low common denominator soft films. I mean, Doug Walker, the whole reason he reviewed Mamma Mia was to address the point of the bad chick flick, where they assume women are too stupid and don't understand that, hey, women can actually be sad. The point of comedy is that there's a basis in suffering, and it's the same issue. And so by getting down people's throats for criticizing a film that is progressive, you're doing more damage, because you're showing, oh, people don't want female movies that actually, try and actually tell a decent story, that actually show humanity, that actually have well-written characters. They just want the gimmick, and that's all. That's what you're turning it into, is a gimmick.
Mm-hmm. And actually, one thing that didn't get mentioned in our discussion, and I'm going to bring it up because it came to me after, was that you brought up the stigma with women. there's a stigma for men in comedies too, because I just barely realized that after thinking about it. You know, I made the comments I did about Ghostbusters, but this has been a problem that's been ongoing in comedies for a long time. Guys are just stupid in comedies. They're absolutely morons. And it actually frustrates me because we could have a lot of smart comedy by now if those movies weren't selling huge numbers.
Yeah, and honestly, and it's partially that there's a problem with how people, like, I mentioned it in the discussion and the review, is that you can have stupid characters, but you have to make sure that the actions the stupid characters take actually have an internal, consistent logic inside them. I mean, off the top of my head, let's say Scooby-Doo, for example. You have the characters of Shaggy and Scooby-Doo. What are their primary motivations? Oh, they like to eat, and so naturally they're going to end up getting themselves in danger because they're trying to basically get a snack or get some sort of food, and that's kind of where the comic comes from, is because you have a consistent goal they're trying to strive towards. And you also have the case of, oh, well, they're naturally afraid of these ghosts and things and wouldn't normally be there, but they got to get that food. It's the same case of, oh, you have April O'Neil. It's like, oh, she wouldn't normally put herself in a dangerous situation, but she's got to get that story. It's those kinds of things that you have to actually think about when writing these types of characters. But the problem is, and that's the problem why I can't stand certain Adam Sandler movies, is because there's the stupidity, but there's no consistent logic to it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, you brought up Scooby-Doo. Yes, Shaggy would be considered the idiot guy in that whole thing because his motivation is primarily done by food. But then you also have the contrast of having Fred in there, who's the smart guy. And granted, like, that's been kind of dumbed down over the years, where he's smart when it comes to traps, but not necessarily anything else. But you have that contrast. You even have the contrast with the girls. You have Velma, who is smart, and you have Daphne, who's kind of there, but not really. She's not as smart as Velma, and that's fine, kind of thing. And you can do that. But no, apparently, you know, Adam Sandler is a big offender of this. I would actually dare say Seth MacFarlane is a bigger offender of this. But I would, if anything, walking away from Ghostbusters, I would like to be able to have better, smarter comedies. That's one of the reasons I like the original, is the original Ghostbusters is a smart comedy.
Yeah, and there are smart comedies being made. It's just you have to actually dig a little bit to find them. That's why that's why every so often I make sure to watch some independent films, because you'd be surprised what you can find. But even then, here's the ultimate problem with comedy as a genre, why it never wins any awards, and why you just have a lot of really bad comedies, is because everybody thinks they're funny. They don't actually take the time to understand why something funny, how to actually tell a good joke. That's why I didn't make a lot of films at my film-centric high schools, because I ran into a lot of those same idiots that thought they were funny when they weren't. But yet when I brought up a point of that their jokes made no sense, basically said, oh, you're too serious. But it's like, no, it's because you guys aren't funny. That's why I stopped doing comedy in my early reviews, is because I realized, okay, it's not working.
Yeah, funniest thing about that. All right, so unfortunately, Shadow Blazer being quiet is making people sad. So your thoughts on this whole thing, Alex?
Okay, well, again, this is just, unfortunately, it's a big product of how poorly Sony's handled the negativity of this, and Paul Feig is just as guilty of this, right? It's just like, oh, you don't like our movie? Well, you must be sexist, and you know, I get it because a few stupid people had to like post things like, "Oh, women aren't funny," right? So they just took that completely and blew it out of proportion and used that as their whole damage control shield to pretty much deflect the whole concept, right? At the end of the day, it's like everybody kind of keeps. And I just watched Doug Walker and Rob Walker review this movie today. It kind of made me angry.
Oh, do they have one already?
Yeah, they do.
I haven't seen that one yet. No.
You know, I mean, their opinion is they're kind of in the middle. They're kind of meh about it, and so was Brad Jones about it. He was kind of just meh. It's okay. It's not awful. Fair enough. But Rob and Doug, they kind of made me a little bit angry today with their review. Maybe I just misconstrued it, but they kind of kept putting everybody into the two categories where if you hate the movie, well, you're either misogynistic or you're just a fat crying fanboy, right? But, well, again, it seems like...
Did they really do that?
I might be exaggerating, okay, but
Okay.
because the emotions are still running high in me, because I've been against this movie for pretty much the start, because I just felt Ghostbusters is a fine movie the way it is. I didn't see a need to remake it or reboot it or just really do anything else with it. I would have loved to have seen a Ghostbusters 3, 10, 15 years ago when you might have still had the chance, but it was too late now. I was ready to move on with my life. I didn't need a remake of Ghostbusters, and Ghostbusters, I don't care that it's not exactly in the golden age of Hollywood with Citizen Kane or To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a fine movie the way it is, and the fact Sony just ended up taking this as part of their damage control is the whole either crying fanboy or misogynistic jerk just
Yeah.
pissed me off more, and that just made me not want to see it, because I'm like, what kind of professional company are you that you have to stoop to childish name-calling tactics to convince people to see your movie, right? And, I mean, hell, I might have even been open to the idea of doing something like Extreme Ghostbusters in a movie format.
Sure, that would have been great.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been fine
That
with
would have been a
that.
legit horror movie.
Like, sure, right? I know in the cartoon it was Egon, and unfortunately Harold Ramis is no longer with us. But maybe you could have given it to Ray Stantz. And,
Yeah, you could have swung that.
you could have given that. I would have been at least a little bit more intrigued by that idea instead of the idea of just simply remaking it with 4 women. I mean, what's really the point? It's just the same movie. You just swap the genders around. There's really nothing different. There's nothing that progressive about it.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's kind of... And keep in mind, this is someone who... I've seen Paul Feig do a smarter comedy with a female lead before. I mean, I absolutely loved Spy, because Spy pretty much did everything that this film should have done, where, yeah, it could lampoon some of the way that women are cast in movies, but still actually not insult the audience or talk down to the audience. I mean, if you want to see Paul Feig at his best, go watch Spy, like Paul Feig and Melissa McCarthy, because it actually does a lot of those things right. But here, it let the real world get to them.
That's where you and me kind of came to the conclusion. I don't know if I would necessarily put Paul Feig up on the chopping block here, because he has written good comedies. I would dare say look at the other ones that I don't think had a whole lot of great stuff credited to their names. And so at that point, those are the people that I'm actually worried didn't have the thick enough skin when the YouTube and the Twitter comments started coming in. It could have been Paul Feig. I don't necessarily know that, but I would like to say that where he has had some good comedies under his belt, the other writers is kind of where I worry about it. Because if I remember correctly, there was a 3-person writing team to it, wasn't there?
Actually,
Wasn't there?
no,
Robbie?
it was only 2. It was just Paul Feig and let me actually pull up her name. I'm gonna pull up her name. Doing it live.
Doing it live, people. Doing it live.
Let's see.
And then crap, I actually had a point with what you were saying there, Alex, and now I've
Sorry.
completely forgotten about it.
Okay. So the movie is written by Katie DePold and Paul Feig.
Casey DePold. The other thing that came to my mind was, and I can't remember what video he did this, but Bennett the Sage did an animated band, and I think it was a Macross one, where he made a big old speech about how we can expect more from anime. And I actually think that if you took anime out of that speech now and just put in movies and comedies, you could pretty much make it work here too. That we can actually expect more, that we can get smarter comedies and them in much more regular strides than we do now. And I think that, in all honesty, would be so much better. I mean, yes, I enjoy stupid comedies like Zoolander, for crying out loud. Zoolander 2 was amazing this year for me. If for no other reason than it was the only comedy this year that made me laugh, aside from Deadpool. But Deadpool I would consider more of an action movie. So at that point, I think we can demand a little bit more, and it's not out of reasoning to be able to say that.
Yeah,
We could get that.
Yeah, especially if you want films to actually be progressive, we should demand that they actually, be good movies. I mean, it's the same debate I get into people who back religious movies just by the virtue of them being religious movies. No, if it's an issue you really care about, you should be taking Hollywood to task and actually say, hey, do an actual good job with this because we're not going to pay for a gimmick.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think we've hammered this subject plenty into the ground. we've stayed on topic with Richard Roper. Final thoughts before we move on into the next story.
Well, I was a lot calmer than I thought I would be, so that's good news.
Which is actually interesting, considering somebody was pointing out how angry you were with Battlefront. So,
yeah,
so let's.
I think the calmness may be because you didn't actually see the movie, Alex.
Oh yeah,
that's true.
Trust me when I say this, people. If he'd seen it, he would have been me raging right now. He would have been. That's where I was at. So, moving on into the next story here, which I know I said I wasn't going to talk about Pokemon Go, and I'm technically not.
It's just that they use it as the logo of the story.
So, it just so happens that I don't think this is entirely motivated by Go, but because I think Legendary Pictures has done this a couple of dozen times, as well as other film companies.
We talked about this. I know we talked about this some time ago on the show, about the potential of a live-action Pokemon.
That people had made numerous pitches for it. So basically, after Nintendo's $9 billion and 25% stock price jump, followed the launch of the Pokemon Go, we have now been told, via Deadline that Legendary Pictures is moving toward making a deal to land the rights for a live-action Pokemon movie.
I'll say what I pretty much said before. It's not going to go far. Nintendo's been very protective, and really, what can you possibly do with a live-action Pokemon movie?
Though in this case, Romney, wouldn't it be a bit more falling on to the Pokemon Company more so than Nintendo?
Well, yes and no. It's very much a case that they're very protective of their IP, and it's very much a case, although Legendary may be honestly wanting to make a good film, with both Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, a lot of the projects they've done have been with a lot of Japanese studios because they seem to have more faith in a lot of Japanese animation studios and Japanese live-action studios handling their properties than they've had with the West ever since the debacle that was the Mario movie.
I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the question that I've had every time this sales pitch has happened. Why? Why does it have to be live-action?
Because money.
And it's another factor is that because, well, sadly, animation still has a bit of a stigma to Western audiences.
Oh, yeah, it does. No, I get that. But at the same time, I envision it in my head and just go, no, I don't think Pokemon translates into live action. I think it's much better in an animated form.
Yeah,
why not go with an animated form? I know you don't want anime. Why not just go with an animated form?
Because that would have to be a really lame CGI animation film or something like that. And frankly, at that point, I'd just rather stick with this Pokemon anime.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, given how well that 4Kids did it with the Pokemon the first movie and how well the marketing worked for that, it's kind of a case I'm surprised the Pokemon Company hasn't really done it. But then again, it's because Nintendo yanked the license away and went to a company that dubs things in Canada. And that's a whole other can of worms, but really it's kind of surprising that they haven't tried releasing more of the movies theatrically, but then again it's because, well, they've saturated their own market. But
yeah,
as for how to make Pokemon work in live action, we discussed numerous pitches, but we really came down to the ultimate issue is that it would have to be something that justifies itself as a live action movie. Like, what is the story you're telling that requires it to be live action that you couldn't do in animation or that you couldn't just do in the games?
And I think a lot of the ideas that we came up with was basically something along the lines of it's a boy and his dog kind of stories. It's a boy and his Pokemon.
Yeah, although I came up with
that would be heartfelt. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that's already the story of the anime anyway.
Yeah, and I even came up with some darker ideas where maybe you could have, a day in the life at the Pokemon Center where you actually see not just like, just healing and treating in the Pokeballs, where you maybe see like Pokemon veterinarians having to do like procedures to actually like patch up these Pokemon, or seeing kind of the other sides that isn't just the battle, where you see the other sides of Pokemon ownership. I mean, honestly, out of all the stories we see, something like The Great Detective Pikachu probably would make for a better live action movie, because there you could see, you're seeing a side of the Pokemon universe that we haven't seen before.
So you're basically saying like a Pokemon ER, roughly?
Pokemon MASH.
honestly, I could see that. I mean, especially when you look at things like with
Give me
Team
Alan
Plasma.
Alda, and I'm on board. Give me Alan Alda, I'm on board.
I mean, to even take it further, you could even do like the whole Pokemon Mash thing. They've mentioned that there's been like wars in the past using Pokemon, especially in the manga, and how Pokemon are more or less a metaphor for guns. You can almost see that. You could see a veterinarian kind of, I mean, the way I could go about it, and granted, I don't know much about the actual canon in the Pokemon universe, but you could see, okay, you have this Pokemon veterinarian who patched up a lot of these Pokemons during this really disastrous war, and then he decides, you know what, Pokemon shouldn't be treated this way, and you could have it be almost kind of like a loose origin for Team Plasma.
Okay, and that's fine and all, but I don't know. I'm still just like sitting here racking my brain on how a live action one could work, especially since accompanied by this story, I also got another story from a listener that there are already script pitches for movies involving Pokemon Go. And I don't even know if I want to do that.
Well, if you do
so
a
you're
movie
basically following a kid who's using his cell phone.
So I'll do it one better. You're basically pitching Digimon. That's pretty much what it is. Like, oh, it's like digital Pokemon. It's like, it's Digimon. That's pretty much what you're pitching is a Digimon movie.
Sweet.
So we've already got a comment saying seeing a live-action Ash, Misty, Brock, and Team Rocket would be mind-blowing to see. Wasn't there a musical?
Yeah, Pokemon Live. It was disturbing.
No, I mean like a Japanese one, like Phoenix Wright level budget.
I think they might have, and I don't know if they still do it, but it's kind of one of those things where it's very much. I mean, I understand how attached people are to the characters of Ash, Misty, and Brock, but honestly, the stories have been told numerous times, and I'm one of those people thinking, do something different, do something new that is something we haven't seen before, because do you honestly want to see a very, like, a poor quality retread of the first episodes of the Pokemon anime? I don't think so.
And the thing with that is, in a sense, we got this in animated form with Pokemon The Origin, which, well, frankly, I mean, it is essentially 3-4 individual episodes, but you could easily string it together as one short movie, and it just doesn't work. So you can't exactly, like, retell the game of, like, you can't tell the story of Red, you can't tell the story of Gold, you can't tell any of the stories, because it just comes down to a quick, condensed mess.
Yeah,
which,
honest.
Yeah, sorry. I think Pokemon just does not lend itself very well to movies outside the animated form where they can do something a little more grandiose as a special adventure in the movies, because Pokemon by itself just has, the way the adventure works and the way the game works, it's very episodic in its nature that it lends itself much better to serial storytelling in TV.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and at the same time, I'm not necessarily against the idea, but it's very much the ideas that I would want to see in a live-action Pokemon film. No company is going to greenlight because they want basically the anime, the movie. They basically want all the safe stuff that has already been established. They don't want to take the kind of risks that I think they would need to take if they actually wanted to make a good live-action Pokemon movie by showing the kind of the darker sides. I'm not saying it has to be dark and gritty, but showing sides of the universe we rarely get to see, and maybe even answering some of the questions people have, like, okay, how do they have things like hamburgers and steak in a world where most of the creatures are used and trained for battle? Like, how do you explain that? I mean, do you want to go the dark route? Oh, is it just separate animals, or is it some weird science that they somehow found a way to make meat products without actually killing animals, or something like that? Or alternately, I mean, one thing I could even see would be, okay, you have like Pokemon ER, maybe even do a crime drama where you explain something with a cop like Officer Jenny. It doesn't have to be Officer Jenny, but very much a case of, okay, we'll show maybe some of the crimes people commit in the Pokemon universe and what they do to stop that. Or basically just show something we haven't seen before that hasn't been explored or addressed before, just to make its existence as a live-action movie. It's something I keep saying, but that's what they'll need to do if Legendary or if the Pokemon Company wants to branch into this.
Okay, you guys are bringing up a lot of good ideas, but I've been kind of sitting here just kind of stewing in it. And I'm going to say something that people are probably going to be upset by, but I think I've just kind of come to a conclusion that if you do a live-action Pokemon, I know that people want a Ash, Misty, Brock storyline scenario. I don't know if I think that's the way you should go. I actually and even the origin like that was actually the first thing that came to my mind. Alex was like, can you do the origin this way and just have a new red and be able to do that? I almost would dare say you'd start from scratch. Like if you wanted to be able to do something like that, you have a brand spanking new character, brand spanking new, 10 years old, and you follow his journey or her journey instead of an Ash archetype or a Ash, Misty, and Brock kind of scenario. I know people want that. In fact, our chat is already suggesting like bringing in Owen Wilson as James and bringing in Ben Stiller as Giovanni. And
no, okay. First off, Ben Stiller would be a lot better as James than Owen Wilson. First off, and secondly,
Ben Stiller was my idea, in fairness, so you can make fun of me for that one.
Yeah, so at that point, I would almost be more intrigued if you went for a different kind of storytelling angle. Now, I like the Pokemon Hospital that you're bringing up. That's a great idea. A day in the life would be awesome, as far as I'm concerned. Or in some cases, like going the Officer Jenny route and trying to find like a Pokemon serial killer or something like that. Like one that knows exactly how to kill fire Pokemon and he lives in Cinnabar Island. Something like that. That would be really cool. I just don't know if I want the typical Pokemon story, which is a kid just barely turns 10 years old and picks his first Pokemon and goes on his journey.
Yeah.
Because then at that point, I'm already worried about, okay, which territory is going to be based in? Is this going to be an Ash archetype? Is this going to be more of a Dawn archetype where we're doing more of the contests than the battles and all that?
And I did just kind of pop in my head, even if they want to do something a bit more lighthearted that does follow that typical journey, there could be another way to go around it. I mean, we had people who've worked on the anime explain, okay, at 10 years old, they're basically considered adults and could go on the journey or continue education. So here's just like a simple pitch. What if you basically have these two characters, boy and a girl, who basically kind of make the juvenile promise, oh, come back when you're a Pokemon master and we'll get married, and you basically follow these two characters as they grow up, as the boy's going on his Pokemon journey, as the girl's continuing her education, and you basically got to go the Notebook route of them exchanging letters back and forth, seeing the brief vignettes, and then seeing kind of how these decisions impact them as they get older and older and older.
I'm sorry, I have to do this, Romney, before you continue. And maybe one day we'll meet up at Tokyo U. I am so sorry for all the anime fans that I just upset by bringing up a Love Hina joke. Moving on.
Yeah, and I mean, the idea is a little bit cheesy, but I mean, if you want to keep it lighthearted, maybe go that route. And actually, okay, well, what if you have these two characters that are trying to keep in touch, as one's traveling the world, capturing Pokemon, and trying to become a good trainer, the other one basically pursuing their education, trying to basically get a lot of the other, basically trying to fill in the other gaps, and kind of seeing how at odds the two lives would be, and say, oh, well, you can even have a part of the story where, like, oh, okay, the girl may not feel as fulfilled because her boyfriend, for lack of a better term, is off seeing the world, but she's basically buried in a book. But then you would see sometime later where, oh, well, I have all these skills, I actually have a job, I can actually support myself. But then you've got the one who became the trainer who is basically only knows Pokemon and obviously would have limited job opportunities. And so it became okay, that'd be something you could actually explore.
He'd be Dr. Grant in the real world.
Pretty much. Except without the degree because he dropped out of school.
Yeah.
This oddly reminds me of Voices of a Distant Star, and I like it. I think it's an interesting idea to look into.
Yeah, the idea for me came from 5 centimeters per second was where the idea for me came from. But the whole, okay, you've got basically these two characters that over the course of their very different lives more or less change. You can even have it be, granted, this is how I would do it. I'm not sure how people would like it, but you'd have a case where they even almost essentially fall out of love because they realize our lives are just too different and we are just two different people at this point. Which, it'd be bittersweet, but I think that's how I would see it going.
And according to the chat, somewhere an anime fan is punching a wall like One Punch Man. Or Mad Bull 34. I don't know One Punch Man, but I can go with Mad Bull. I don't know why I've seen that.
I don't know why you've seen a lot of things.
Because the anime market was a weird Wild West for a long time.
Yeah, it was. I mean, for crying out loud, in our local Hollywood Video, there was like, and I'm saying my local Hollywood Video and Blockbuster, there were actual hentais in the animation section.
That was how it was back in the day.
You literally had, like in my store, you had literally 2 known hentai, right next to like Beauty and the Beast.
I pity the poor mother who rented the hentai.
Yeah.
No, no, no. You don't pity the poor mother. You pity the employee that didn't do his homework, because that mother is going to come in and proverbially rip their heads off.
Yeah, see, it's for reasons like that that my sister would pretty much screen any anime we ever checked out from a library or a rental place. Like, because she was the oldest, she would always screen everything before she would let me and my younger brother watch it, and it was for that reason.
Yeah, we had that too. We had a friend who was very much an anime fan and would screen stuff and only show us stuff that she thought was appropriate. However, she did find it appropriate that my family see Tenchi Muyo Ryo Oki.
Yeah.
That may not have worked out as well as I thought.
Well, that's kind of how it is in my case, where basically we ended up watching stuff like Fushigi Yugi. And granted, it has at least something for everybody, but it is still very much a romance series for girls, and it has a lot of the same baggage. Granted,
Yeah.
it's probably one of the few romance anime where the main characters are basically screwed over, like, repeatedly, and the ending is actually pretty dang sad. I remember my sister was straight up bawling. I don't want to say any spoilers in case people want to check it out, but straight up bawling towards the end of the series because of just how messed up and how depressing it gets.
Yeah, so final thoughts on Pokemon the live action movie. I mean, obviously we're seeing positive reception. People want this to happen. And you know what? Given the momentum that Pokemon Go is creating, this would be the perfect time to try and get something like that into the works. But my final thought is just simply I just don't really see a purpose to it. I the anime movies I think do plenty. I mean, another question that I wanted to bring up, but I'll bring it up now is, do you bring up legendaries in this live action series, or do you just leave them out, kind of thing? Which I actually would dare say, since I want it to be like average Pokemon trainer kind of thing, I'd almost leave the legendaries out.
I personally say you gotta.
And you don't
bring
ever
in the
see 'em.
legendary. No, I say you gotta bring in the legendaries, because that is half the appeal of Pokemon and Pokemon training, is going after these mystical beasts.
Yeah,
but then you have the trainer never catch them.
Or, well, you could go the route of almost kind of like the Old Man in the Sea, where maybe you have a trainer who devotes their life trying to catch this legendary, but at the very end, when they're able to catch it, either through some sort of show of mercy or just because of happenstance, where they end up either not catching it, either be by choosing not to, or just by virtue of it just slipping away. I mean, you have the idea in The Old Man in the Sea. The guy spends his whole life trying to catch this elusive fish, but then as he's bringing it back to shore, it's slowly eaten away by all the other fish, but by the time he gets back to shore, he's left with nothing.
It's one of those things for me where, like, it's irritated me over time, but, we followed Ash's journey for who knows how long, and he still has no legendaries in his arsenal. Yet, average players have them. They're so regular now that I believe at tournaments they're forbidden. You cannot use them because they're overpowered in stats. And if this is going to be like an average Pokemon trainer, I don't even know if I want him to have like a sighting, because then at that point, the viewer is going to ask or say under their breath, pull a Pokemon out or a Pokeball out and try and catch the thing.
Yeah, or alternately, I mean, if you want to introduce, I mean, you would need to have a legendary, because it would go back to the idea of justifying it being a movie, like not having it just be, oh, it's something that could be a TV series, like actually making it actually feel like a bigger story. I mean, if you want to, I mean, off the top of my head, you could be, oh, well, what if a trainer happened to find this egg that everybody's after because it could possibly hatch a legendary Pokemon, and that's why so many people are after it. There you go. Now you have a story that could have the same elements of battles and stuff like that, but it actually has something that raises the stakes, that actually has a clear goal, like, oh, I have to keep this egg protected until it hatches because it could be something legendary, and I don't want people like Team Rocket or Team Magma or Team Aqua or Team Plasma to get a hold of it because it could basically cause untold destruction.
Okay. All right, I can kind of jump on that one. Alex, final thoughts for this live-action movie?
Well, I'm not saying I particularly want it, but I don't know. It's sort of a wait and see what happens if this project does get off the ground. I can only hope it gets a slightly better treatment than Warcraft, at least.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Warcraft got a better treatment than a lot of video game movies, so keep that in mind.
True, but at the same time, it's kind of a case you don't want it to get too caught up in the lore, but you also don't want it to be disrespectful. it's very much a sticky situation regardless, because, I mean, I feel sorry for whatever screenwriter gets saddled with this, because, yeah, I mean, we talk about us having targets on our back for having a negative opinion about Ghostbusters. The screenwriter who gets landed with this, even if Legendary gets the rights, they're going to be put under the microscope.
Pretty much for the entire time it's developed.
Yep.
So, all right, well, that's actually our stories for this week, but we have a little bit of extra time, so we're going to add in one of our backup stories, which is actually an update in regards to the discussion that we had last week about CSGO Lotto. And by the way, don't ask China about Warcraft. They hate Blizzard. They don't even like the fact that they probably paid for the Warcraft movie, so at that point, don't ask China about Warcraft. They don't care.
The government doesn't care, but Warcraft is hugely popular over there.
Oh yeah, it's popular there, but then the parents and the government will get involved with the parents and say, this is why you shouldn't like Warcraft, even though our prison system is thriving off of it.
Yeah, at the same time, it'll pretty much be a case of, oh, if you see this movie, it'll hurt your Sesame credit rating.
Pretty much.
That'll be all they'll need to say.
So, back to the update. So, we did have an update with CSGO Lotto, and one of the biggest discussion points we talked about with that is the lack of involvement by Steam. Steam didn't give a crap about these sites. They haven't really done anything about them. Well, now they've actually done something about it, which is basically, the way that I understand it from this announcement is that they are going to stop that. You will not be able to use these items within sites like this, or at least that's the premise that they would like to be able to go with. I'm not entirely sure after reading this like 3 times. Alex, did you want to go take this over? Maybe I'm seeing things differently.
Personally, I was hoping you would understand it better than I, because it's very convoluted, mumbly terms of service.
Send me the link. I'll see if I can decipher it.
Yeah, like we're gonna have to piece this together because it really is very unclear.
I'm gonna put it in the chat.
As to Steam's actual opinion on it.
Okay, let's take a look, see if there's legalese that needs to be deciphered.
Yeah, so we're going to start sending notices to these sites requesting they cease operations through Steam. So that's going to happen. And further pursue the matter as necessary. Users should probably consider this information as they manage their in-game item inventory and trade activities. So basically, they are going to put the kibosh on it. You cannot actually utilize this with them. Or through Steam. They will not endorse it at all. Which is pretty much what we were asking for, wasn't it? Because if you can't get them through Steam, then things like CSGO Lotto aren't viable anymore. Because how do you get the items?
Yeah, looking at this, it is pretty vague, saying, "Oh, we're basically just going to tell them."
Steam's vague.
Yeah, it's pretty much saying, "Oh, we're basically going to tell these sites to stop, and then just do and basically just proceed as." That's pretty much all it's saying. Oh, we're basically going to tell these sites to stop and basically just crack down as needed, but not really saying any specifics. That's kind of what I'm seeing here, that's pretty much all they're really saying. They're not saying anything concrete. They're basically saying, okay, we're just going to tell these sites to stop and basically crack down on these trades, but it's saying users should probably consider this information as they manage their in-game inventory and trade activity, and it's... Honestly, it feels a bit like a legalese smokescreen.
Yeah, it really does. It really sounds like after reading this again, I've read it 3 times, people, and I cannot get anything aside from Steam saving face on the matter. I don't. It's great and all that you're gonna say we're gonna step in and say you can't do this. Okay, how are you gonna enforce it? Mm-hmm. How are you going to make sure that this isn't happening? Because what happens if it's still happening and people are getting screwed and they're still holding you responsible for it, Steam?
Yeah, especially considering that it's literally has the gambling loophole of people trading these items through Steam and money just changing hands outside of it. And it's kind of how can you actually curb that?
Their part of the relationship is done at that point, and so yeah, you can make stern statements, Steam, but it's not like you're like, there's nothing in here that tells me that you're going to bar them. These items cannot be exchanged on another site. They can only be acquired through Steam or through, official Counter-Strike Global Offensive venues or routes. you're just basically saying, stop. You're making us look bad. Stop.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Adam. That's pretty much all this is really saying, is because it's like saying, oh, like Steam does not have a system for turning in-game items into real-world currency. We have never received revenue from any of these sites. And that's pretty much all saying, oh, well, we don't make any money on this at all. We're going to tell them to stop, and that's it.
Alex, your thoughts on this update from Steam?
Yeah, it sounds like Steam blowing hot air to try and make it look like they're doing stuff when they're not.
Yeah, pretty much. I wish that they'd made a little bit more of a solid position on this one, but this is basically their PR guy at work, unfortunately. And so this is actually one that I will probably open up to the community. Like, you guys can reach out to us on Facebook and Twitter and just give us your opinion. Should Steam have had a stiffer position on this, or should they have gotten a little bit more involved? And let me know what you guys think about it. But I think that's pretty much our final thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, because really, there's only so much Steam can really do, because, again, there's a lot of these loopholes for reasons, because Steam's only liable to a certain degree, and honestly, if they have it, oh, well, there's no way to turn it into a real-world currency, but they make money off people buying these skins, it's just very much, I mean, this would be extreme, but honestly, what I would do if I was someone over at Valve, I would say, you know what, this is causing way too much problem, let's just stop the flow of skins and stuff coming out, going in or out, until we can get this sorted out. We'll just say, okay, we're stopping all trades on all these items for this game until we can actually get this sorted out, and just stop it right there, stop these sites from making the money, and basically just say, okay, we're putting a stop to this until we get something in place.
All right. So let's go ahead and wrap things up for this evening. We're a little under, but I'm actually kind of happy about that, because that gives us enough time to be able to wrap things up. So we hope you guys have enjoyed the stories that we have covered tonight, but obviously we're not the only ones with opinions. So if you guys want to reach out to us and give us your feedback on the stories, whether or not you think we are in the right or in the wrong, Alex, how do they do that with you?
Well, of course, I am on YouTube. Shadow Blizzard 3000 is where my main channel is at, where I provide anime content as well as the occasional gaming content. I also have a second channel that I keep on backup just in case I get saddled with bullshit copyright strikes like I am now for videos that go over 15 minutes. So Shadow Blizzard 3000 X2, you can just follow any links from my channel page. It's pretty easy to find. I have everything organized. And, of course, you can find me on Twitter, social media. That's where I'm most active in terms of social media, at AlexJShort.
All right. Stephen Romney, if people have opinions on your opinions, how do they get a hold of you to share said opinions?
Well, you can always find me on YouTube at youtube.com/StudioGhostUtah. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Romney'sReviews, no apostrophe. And you can also find me on Twitter at RomneyReviews. And as for the ever-growing list of Romney's recommendations, this week I'm recommending a YouTube channel that I think you should all check out, and that is specifically Triforce Films. In particular, their Saturday morning acapella videos, because I've been listening to their acapella rendition of the Ghostbusters theme, which is what made me want to check out the cartoon, because they do acapella renditions of Saturday morning cartoon themes, and, well, it's really well put together. The guy is really skilled, and so, yeah, check it out. Triforce, youtube.com/TriforceFilms. Look up Saturday morning acapella.
All right. And if people want to get a hold of me to share their opinions on my opinions, there are two best ways to be able to do it. One is via Twitter, which is at Dirac2326. You can leave your opinions there, and I try to get to them as quickly as I'm able to, but unfortunately Twitter sometimes moves a little fast for me, and so I will get back to your comments. Eventually, I hope. Sometimes it's just better to go via YouTube, and that's the other way to get a hold of me, which is youtube.com/Dirac2326. That is where Geek News is hosted, so you can look into our ginormous archive of all of the opinions that we've had over the many years, including the fact, and we brought this up in the Romney's discussion, but you can look into the archive for all of the opinions that we've had with any update that came out with this most recent Ghostbusters release. You can do that. Not everything is there. I'm hoping at some point to do that, but it's a costly process, and I actually have to get some of that data. So those are the ways to be able to get a hold of me. If you want to get a hold of the show directly, there are 4 ways to do it. And the first 2 are social networking. You can look us up on Facebook, look up Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, and like it, and you'll get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live, the stories that we'll be discussing, and we'll even open things up to you guys occasionally to be able to get your opinions and add just that much more to our discussions. I especially like tonight that we had a live chat so that we can, again, bring you guys' opinions into the discussion, because sometimes that helps us out. That actually gives us a fresh perspective, maybe some angle we didn't actually see that story from. So I do appreciate that. You can also follow us on Twitter, which is @GeekyNRO, and you can get the exact same updates there. The other thing also that I do try and update is all of the most recent videos that we all work on as YouTubers. Because here's the thing, the podcast isn't everything that we do. I do game reviews, I do Let's Plays, I do a bunch of other content. Romney does movie reviews, including Ghostbusters, but also he's done The Secret Life of Pets and numerous other things, and we try to bring those videos there too so you guys can check out their respective channels. Oh, and also the Shadow Blazer's doing another playthrough of Long Live the Queen.
What can I say? I'm addicted to that game.
Yep, moving on. I'm so mean to Alex. I'm going to get such abuse for this, but I don't care. It's just one of those things. It's one of the cute and cuddly things about our relationship, is that I abuse the living crap out of him, and he is okay with it. Wow, that sounded horribly wrong. I am sorry. So the other 2 ways to be able to get a hold of us are via our email, which is geekyweek@gmail.com. And you can leave stories that you would like us to discuss. You can also leave variations on those stories if you would like us to talk about it from a certain perspective. Like I said, all of the Battlefront stories tonight were pretty much brought up for the Shadow Blazer. So we do have stuff like that brought up. And it does get considered. Just the one thing that I would ask with it is if you bring the stories to our attention, give us the viable article so that we can do our homework with it. I've had plenty that were just a Twitter post. And it's like, oh, okay, well now I have to do all the work on my end, and that's not a fun prospect. The other way is via Podomatic, which is our RSS feed. So you can go to geekyweek.podomatic.com, and you can get access to our RSS feed. Now, I know that is not up to date. Unfortunately, I'm trying to work out some issues with Podomatic right now, but there is archived episodes up there. And it's one of the things that I'm actually trying to work out is we may only be able to have a more recent archive in Podomatic, but you'll still be able to get access to that, and also you will be able to get access to our page on iTunes and be able to get new episodes whenever you log into iTunes when they're available. So that will be made available as soon as I can get all of this other stuff hashed out, and then I can get all of the episodes updated. So I will keep you guys apprised of that situation as we go along. But in the meantime, that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. So we hope you guys have enjoyed. We continue to love you guys' words, your contributions, all of the things that you do for us while we do this lowly little podcast and continue to have fun while just being fellow YouTubers. And I can honestly say that it's actually been really awesome to be able to have a live chat tonight. That's been really awesome for us to be able to contribute in and be able to give our opinions to those as well. So I have a feeling this is going to be a more stable aspect of the podcast from here on in. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us. So for me, for Romney, and for Alex, we'll see you guys next time for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions. Bye-bye.